लाइफ में लेना देना तो चलता रहता है। इधर फ्लेक्सी लोन से बोरो कर लिया और उधर बाय मॉम डैड का वेकेशन डन। शादी का डिसीजन लिया, फ्लेक्सी लोन से और बोरो किया। प्रमोशन मिला तो ये लो थोड़ा लोन वापस कर दिया, थैंक यू। नए इंटीरियर्स का दिल किया, फ्लेक्सी लोन से फिर थोड़ा ले लिया। ईयर एंड बोनस मिला तो इस बार लोन ज्यादा वापस कर दिया। लाइफ में लेना देना चलता रहेगा तो लोन्स में क्यों नहीं। इसीलिए फ्लेक्सी लोन फ्रॉम बजाज फिनसर्व एक ऐसा लोन जो जब चाहे बोरो करे, जैसे चाहे रीपे करे, वो भी चुटकी में। थिंक इट डन विद बजाज फिनसर्व।
हेलो, हर सीजन के लिए नए इंटीरियर्स?
हाँ, वो भी हर रूम के लिए।
फ्रिज, स्मार्टफोन या बड़ा टीवी?
तीनों क्यों नहीं?
अरे ये तो शॉपिंग लिस्ट में नहीं था।
सो अब शॉपिंग कार्ट में तो है। सॉरी।
अच्छा, नए आउटफिट्स की विश लिस्ट।
विश क्यों? जस्ट ऐड टू कार्ट एंड बाय।
तो ये सब EMI पे?
और वो भी चुटकी में। On India's fastest growing EMI network. Think it done with Bajaj Finserv.
सर, अपनों को खुश रखना इससे आसान हो ही नहीं सकता। साहब, अपनों को खुश रखना इससे आसान हो ही नहीं सकता। हुजूर, अपनों को खुश रखना इससे आसान हो ही नहीं सकता।
अपनों को खुश रखना इससे आसान।
अपनों को खुशियां दिलाना आसान नहीं बनाते तो आगे कैसे बढ़ते। इसीलिए हम जो भी करते हैं उसे बेहतर बनाते आ रहे हैं, बनाते रहेंगे। बजाज फिनसर्व, थिंक इट डन।
माँ के बेडरूम का एसी या लेटेस्ट मोबाइल फॉर भाई, लेटेस्ट मोबाइल फॉर भाई, लेटेस्ट मोबाइल फॉर भाई। पुणे, पटना, चेन्नई, मथुरा या फिर बेगूसराय, या फिर बेगूसराय। नए घर के लिए चाहिए 4K टीवी हाई फाई, या फिर वाइफ को चाहिए लेटेस्ट स्टाइल। EMI है ना, EMI है ना, EMI। मॉड्यूलर किचन में पुराना फ्रिज क्यों है भाई?
शादी है नहीं, मैट्रेस पुराना है भाई। अक्खा इंडिया बोले भाई प्राइजेस है हाई। बेस्ट ही खरीदना है तो अपने EMI स्टोर पर आए।
EMI है ना, EMI।
अब काशी हो या वाशी, महंगा लगे तो EMI और बेस्ट ही चाहिए तो भी EMI, क्योंकि बजाज फिनसर्व का EMI है ना। विजिट www.emistore.com।
EMI है ना, EMI है ना, EMI।
धोखा है धोखा, धोखा ना खाओ जी। इंश्योरेंस फ्रॉड से बचना है बहुत जरूरी जी। वो एजेंट है या फ्रॉड पता लगाओ जी। एक्स्ट्रा ऑफर के झांसे में कहीं फंस ना जाओ जी। अगर कोई अनजान कॉलर इंश्योरेंस पॉलिसी डिटेल्स मांगे तो कह देना उनको मिलके स्कैम को एंड करो, हमेशा सेफ रहो जी। Always verify the caller and do not surrender your insurance for attractive offers. हमेशा सावधान रहे, safe रहे. Issued in the interest of public awareness by Bajaj Finserv. धोखा है धोखा, धोखा ना खाओ जी। जो होगा सो होगा, ऐसे ना सोचो जी। पूछे OTP दो ना जी, तो कह देना उनको मिलके स्कैम को एंड करो, हमेशा सेफ रहो जी।
Being a hero is all about heart. It's not about ruling the world. It's about owning it. It's not about winning a race. It's about delivering a smile to the human race. It's about a spirit that just cannot be confined by geographies. It's about the heart that beats for the future and a soul that echoes the values of generations. And yet, being a hero is never about the hero. It's about the millions who celebrate them. Hero Motorcorp, the motorcycle leader. There's a gush of wind that hums a sweet song. There's a gush of wind that fights like a hero to fill the world with possibility. There's a gush of wind that jumps across oceans and mountains, embracing the entire planet. There's a gush of wind that blows away darkness. There's a gush of wind that blows for humanity. Because at Hero, we care.
In 1868, the Tata Group was founded on a philosophy that put the community at the heart of its existence. Today, we are $100 billion global enterprise. Our today has been built on enduring values. Today is about delivering excellence across business sectors. Today is about building a future-ready nation. Our today has a strong foundation with community at its core. Our today is dedicated to the communities we serve. today is always about more than just a day. Our today is a continuous journey for a better tomorrow. Tata. Leadership with trust.
Behold, the story of victory, of life over malady. Behold the saga of power, of science over sickness. Behold the tale of triumph, of dedication over disease. Behold the rise and rise of Cadila Pharmaceuticals Limited, one of India's largest privately held pharmaceutical companies based out of Ahmedabad, Gujarat, India. Cadila Pharmaceuticals was born out of the vision of a legend who left an indelible mark in the chronicles of Indian pharmaceuticals industry. He was Indravardhan Ambalal Modi, the founder chairman of the company, rightfully christened as the medicine man of India. His vision to alleviate pain of the underprivileged through research-driven innovations has been driving Cadila Pharmaceuticals for more than 6 decades now. Innovations which are backed by the key strengths of the company, the state-of-the-art manufacturing and research facilities. The flagship manufacturing facility at Dholka, Gujarat, sprawls over 100 acres. This avant-garde facility is US FDA approved, besides meeting most of the stringent quality standards across the globe. It manufactures tablets, capsules, injectables, liquids, and orals. The second formulations manufacturing facility is located at Samba in the state of Jammu and Kashmir. The API facilities at Ankleshwar, Gujarat, manufacture a large number of key APIs and intermediates at this US FDA and ISO 9002 and ISO 14001 accredited plant. The company also has set up its first ever overseas formulation manufacturing facility at Addis Ababa in Ethiopia. This world-class facility is the only WHO CGMP compliant manufacturing facility in the region. More than 850 products spread across 12 specialties with many of India's top brands in its basket. Great goals are defined by far-sighted vision and achieved by seamless teamwork. A multicultural, multilingual and multinational workforce of over 7,000 employees is truly the propelling power of the company. Not just in the domestic market, the company has a wide global footprint with over 1,000 marketing authorizations across 85 countries. Its international sales force of over 150 highly diversified and versatile personnel lends it an outreach that blankets the globe. As the company grows, so does its commitment to research. Manned by more than 350 scientists, the R&D facilities of Cadila Pharmaceuticals at Dholka, Gujarat is an institution of breakthrough innovations. To take the focus on innovation to the next level, it partners with leading international companies to discover newer treatments. The Cadila Pharmaceuticals Group is gigantic. Its group companies complement and expand the dynamic vision of the company across new avenues of healthcare and newer fast-paced business areas. Cadila Pharmaceuticals is a gentle giant. Decades of dedicated research, groundbreaking healthcare innovations, and worldwide impact proves the infinite potential of one powerful emotion. Care. The success of Cadila Pharmaceuticals bears testimony to the fact that the care continues.
आने वाले कल की दस्तक हमें सुनाई देती है, नई मंजिल है जिस ओर हमें वो दिशा दिखाई देती है, नए नए इंडिया का नया जोश, नए जोश से निकल पड़े हम, आने वाला कल होगा हमारा, नए इंडिया का नया जोश।
और नए इंडिया के सफर में टेक्नोलॉजी की शक्ति लेकर आपका भागीदार रहेगा रिलायंस। नए इंडिया का नया जोश।
लाइफ में लेना देना तो चलता रहता है। इधर फ्लेक्सी लोन से बोरो कर लिया और उधर बाय मॉम डैड का वेकेशन डन। शादी का डिसीजन लिया, फ्लेक्सी लोन से और बोरो किया। प्रमोशन मिला तो ये लो थोड़ा लोन वापस कर दिया। थैंक यू। नए इंटीरियर्स का दिल किया, फ्लेक्सी लोन से फिर थोड़ा ले लिया। ईयर एंड बोनस मिला तो इस बार लोन ज्यादा वापस कर दिया। लाइफ में लेना देना चलता रहेगा तो लोन्स में क्यों नहीं। इसीलिए फ्लेक्सी लोन फ्रॉम बजाज फिनसर्व एक ऐसा लोन जो जब चाहे बोरो करे, जैसे चाहे रीपे करे, वो भी चुटकी में। थिंक इट डन विद बजाज फिनसर्व।
हेलो, हर सीजन के लिए नए इंटीरियर्स।
हाँ, वो भी हर रूम के लिए।
फ्रिज, स्मार्टफोन या बड़ा टीवी,
तीनों क्यों नहीं?
अरे ये तो शॉपिंग लिस्ट में नहीं था।
सो अब शॉपिंग कार्ट में तो है। सॉरी।
अच्छा, नए आउटफिट्स की विश लिस्ट।
विश क्यों? जस्ट ऐड टू कार्ट एंड बाय।
तो ये सब EMI पे,
और वो भी चुटकी में। On India's fastest growing EMI network. Think it done with Bajaj Finserv.
सर, अपनों को खुश रखना इससे आसान हो ही नहीं सकता। साहब, अपनों को खुश रखना इससे आसान हो ही नहीं सकता। हुजूर, अपनों को खुश रखना इससे आसान हो ही नहीं सकता।
अपनों को खुश रखना इससे आसान।
अपनों को खुशियां दिलाना आसान नहीं बनाते तो आगे कैसे बढ़ते। इसीलिए हम जो भी करते हैं उसे बेहतर बनाते आ रहे हैं, बनाते रहेंगे। बजाज फिनसर्व, थिंक इट डन।
माँ के बेडरूम का एसी या लेटेस्ट मोबाइल फॉर भाई, लेटेस्ट मोबाइल फॉर भाई, लेटेस्ट मोबाइल फॉर भाई। पुणे, पटना, चेन्नई, मथुरा या फिर बेगूसराय,
या फिर बेगूसराय।
नए घर के लिए चाहिए 4K टीवी हाई फाई, या फिर वाइफ को चाहिए लेटेस्ट स्टाइल। EMI है ना, EMI है ना, EMI। मॉड्यूलर किचन में पुराना फ्रिज क्यों है भाई?
शादी है नहीं, मैट्रेस पुराना है भाई। अक्खा इंडिया बोले भाई प्राइजेस है हाई, बेस्ट ही खरीदना है तो अपने EMI स्टोर पर आए।
EMI है ना, EMI।
अब काशी हो या वाशी, महंगा लगे तो EMI और बेस्ट ही चाहिए तो भी EMI, क्योंकि बजाज फिनसर्व का EMI है ना। विजिट www.emistore.com।
EMI है ना, EMI है ना, EMI।
नाची 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 नाची। धोखा है धोखा, धोखा ना खाओ जी। नाची 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 नाची। इंश्योरेंस फ्रॉड से बचना है बहुत जरूरी जी। नाची 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 नाची। वो एजेंट है या फ्रॉड पता लगाओ जी, एक्स्ट्रा ऑफर के झांसे में कहीं फंस ना जाओ जी।
अगर कोई अनजान कॉलर इंश्योरेंस पॉलिसी डिटेल्स
Would you prefer that I call you in to speak at the beginning or a little bit later?
Later, yes, of course. Yes, of course.
A bit later? Good. I got it. So I'll probably invite you almost last to speak in that case, right?
So we are live now, Mr. Joshi.
Great. Okay. So shall we begin in that case?
Yes, please. So.
Okay.
Great. So good evening. A very warm welcome to our esteemed panelists and a very special welcome indeed to delegates from across the world, quite literally, who are joining us this evening, India time, at the CII Partnership Summit 2021. And this session, of course, is on leveraging the power of youth and the role of the Y20. The global economic recovery is strengthening, supported by intensified vaccination drives, rollouts across the globe, and a strong revival of consumer spending, as we know. The recent news of the new variant is of concern and has consequently led to proactive measures being adopted across the world to address apprehensions around future waves. A cautious approach is being adopted across economies to support growth and avoid any further disruptions. This evening's session will center the discussions of mainstreaming and integrating youth for economic development and social change through collaborative engagement and participatory approach. The Y20, which represents the collective voice of youth from the G20 member countries, is a platform which champions the engagement of youth by enabling them to come forward to ideate, deliberate, and express their voices on building the future of their aspirations. This collective voice is represented through the official Y20 communique to heads of state, governments, and policymakers alike, and especially of the G20 member countries. Youth comprising young people between 15 to 24 years of age represent 16% of the global population, or 1.2 billion. And by the year 2030, this number will rise to reach 1.3 billion. They are critical thinkers, change makers, innovators, communicators, and leaders. And all of these can become the driving force in supporting economic development and contribute to social change in each of their respective countries. To build an inclusive roadmap of global development and growth, it is critical to engage and integrate the voice of this significant segment of the global population. This is even more important in current times, wherein the COVID pandemic has highlighted several global economic and social challenges, several of which the youth align with closely or are severely impacted by, such as sustainability, diversity, gender equality, equity, including vaccine equity recently, changing nature of jobs through automation and digital technology, loss of learning, and education. With this brief introductory context setting, I am delighted to briefly introduce my esteemed global panel of speakers who will be sharing their thoughts and perspectives later in the session. Each of them lead and represent organizations that work very closely with the youth on agendas that include youth development, youth participation, and youth engagement. As we begin the session's deliberations, it is my special privilege to invite MOYS to invite all of the speakers to share perspectives and thoughts on the importance of global collaboration and on promoting youth development. May I now very briefly proceed to introduce some of the speakers who are with us this morning or this evening. So also from CII, the National Chair of CII Young Indians and the Director and CFO of PTC Industries, Ms. Smita Agarwal. Smita, of course, has had a very interesting and a very international career. She's worked with PricewaterhouseCoopers in both London and New Delhi. She's been involved in all sorts of both NGOs and corporations, and is the recipient of many prestigious awards. Mr. Alexei Mostov-Chikov, I apologize for mispronunciation, which is inevitable, is the member of the General Counsel and Chairman of Digital Economy Subcommittee of Business Russia. He's an entrepreneur, he's a member of the General Council, as I just said, and also is involved very actively in both the university system and business. He's also the chairman of MRO Company and the Association of Young Entrepreneurs of Russia. And next we have Agustin, or Mr. Agustin Alejandro Barto Carroll from Argentina. He is the chair of the Y20 Argentina 2018 and CEO and founder of ADOS. And from Indonesia, we have Ms. Gracia Paramita, who is the co-chair of Y20 Indonesia 2022 and co-founder of Indonesian Youth Diplomacy, or YID. And in addition to this, she's also been a part of the Y8 Summit in 2013 in London. She's been, of course, very engaged for a long time, as we know. And she is, well, not Miss, but Doctor, because she's done her PhD in the Department of Politics, University of York in the UK. It is my distinct pleasure to invite you all. A little bit later, we will also be joined from Italy by Ms. Alberta Pellino, who's the chair of the Y20 Italy 2021 and founder and president of the Young Ambassadors Society. So very warm welcome to all of you indeed. And yes, I knew I'd leave someone out. Also, Mr. Soichiro Chiba, the chair of the Y20 Japan 2019 and former advisor to the Prime Minister's Cabinet for World Assembly for Women in Japan. And in addition to this, he is also a Fulbright scholar at Harvard Business School, and he made policy recommendations to Prime Minister Abe and also to President Putin, as it turns out, in Y20 2013. He's served as one of 13 advisors to the Prime Minister's Cabinet for to plan for the World Assembly for Women in the last couple of years, 2019-20, and advised the chairwoman of Tokyo 2020 Olympics. He is the co-author of Japan, Land of the Setting Sun, ? Which analyzes Japanese economy and is currently being taught at HBS. The book is being taught at HBS as a required curriculum. He also plays the violin and, well, not plays, but he also does kenjutsu. So welcome, everybody. Some I do realize they get to join us virtually, but why don't we start off with Smita? Smita, why don't you kick things off with your remarks? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bharat. Thank you. And it's really wonderful to be here today in the company of such wonderful panelists and to be able to share my thoughts on this kind of a panel. A very, very good evening and good morning to some of the panelists. I think we are all in different parts of the world, and this is the advantage that we have with technology and the leaps and bounds that has grown as a result of this pandemic. I also hope that today's session will be fruitful, and this objective that we have today of collaborating with young leaders across the world, working towards economic revival, supporting more job creation and bringing about social change, which we hope can also happen through innovation and technology, will be something that we will be able to move further towards. I really feel, Bharat, I think as you were talking about earlier, this is a really extraordinary time, and definitely in the post-pandemic world, it is most important both for the global economy and for a country like India, because not only are we recovering from the effects of the pandemic, and of course in India we had this complete devastation in the form of the second wave, we are also trying to now rebuild a world which has more resilience and more inner strength, and at the same time trying to ensure that the growth and prosperity that we bring in as a result of this work that we are doing is both inclusive and sustainable, and it addresses the needs of all and is not limited in its reach and its benefits to only a few. Because I also have the honor of representing India's point of view, I must point out that as a country, India has a huge demographic dividend in the form of the youth, and the range of opportunities that India provides today, which are so dynamic, not just for the world, not just for India, but for the entire world. This is absolutely immense. It is definitely the second most populous country in the world, and the average age of an Indian is just 29. But India also has one of the largest workforces in the world. And there are 4 points that I would like to share here, which are, I would consider, key advantages in the context of India and the context of the discussion that we are having here today. As a country, the literacy rate of the Indian youth has been growing substantially. And it's just a very heartening thing that over 90% of Indian youth can now read and write. And in the age of the internet and smartphones, the Indian youth are now very digitally savvy and they have huge access to online resources for learning and skilling. At the same time, the second point that I'd like to make is that the startup culture in India has seen a tremendous boost. And the latest data that we have indicates that we've got 79 unicorns, most of which have sprung up in the last 3 years, carrying a valuation of almost $260 billion. What's more important than this number is the fact that India is also now the third largest ecosystem for startups, and it ranks second in innovation quality. This basically indicates that a lot more young Indians are now tapping into entrepreneurial opportunities. And if they were given the right access and the right kind of support, there can be a paradigm shift, not just again for the country, but for the entire world. 62% of the Indian working class is aged between 15 and 59. And this also means that as an investment destination, India is become one of the most attractive countries in the world. And it has this huge advantage of having a highly skilled and young population as a workforce, at the same time being one of the largest markets in the world. And the fourth key advantage that I'd like to point out in the context of India is that this young population in our country is also significantly aware and tolerant of the diversity, and it works towards inclusivity and understands that having an inclusive workforce will bring great advantages both to an enterprise and also to our entire country. With these factors in mind, the current time is very, very critical both for influencing and empowering the youth, and ensuring that the youth of this country take equal responsibility in building a country, a new India, with a commitment towards the country, the planet, and each other. I know you're familiar a little bit with what Young Indians does, and of course, as an organization that is an integral part of CII, I'm very proud to say that today YI's reach and influence spreads across the entire length and breadth of our country. We have 56 chapters with over 4,000 members and a really active stakeholder community. YI has now penetrated deep into the young demographic of our country, and we work largely in Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities. And this reach continues to expand. We are working with over 145 colleges, with 30,000 college students, which we call our Yuva members, and 250 schools, which gives us access to nearly 350,000 school children. We are also working in the rural communities. Over 113 rural communities have been tapped into by YI. And in the past 2 years, we've started a smart learning initiative, which again, using the power of digital technology, gives access even to the rural youth to some of the initiatives and the advancements that are here today. So YI in many ways has become a bridge to the youth for our country. And what is the strongest objective of an organization like this is to drive the dynamism, the passion, and the energy of India's youth towards activities which also focus on nation building and empower them to become the strongest drivers of economic, social, and technological evolutions that are happening in the country today. There's no other organization in India that has this kind of culture, this lineage, and the strong focus that YI carries towards youth leadership and nation building is setting us apart from other organizations that operate in the same sphere. Again, when we talk about empowering the youth and bringing about a massive change in the country, there is also a need to build a mindset of inclusivity, empathy, and this is done through a lot of projects of social significance that YI works on, which are nation building activities, like our projects on child sexual abuse called Project Masoom, other projects like Gift and Organ, road safety, climate change. I mean, the list just goes on, and there's a tremendous amount of work that is being done in order to empower the youth and also build in this sense of responsibility. So connecting with the youth, connecting with more startups and younger entrepreneurs, and the new economy has now gained a lot of relevance in these times. The growth that we must envision for our country and for the world as a whole has to be fueled by this section of society equally. The youth will definitely be one of the most important factors in contributing towards providing a pool of ideas. And if through collaborative and innovative platforms, which organizations like YI and the organizations of all our other esteemed panelists here could offer, there could be a wealth of insight into understanding and views of the world and exchange of ideas, knowledge, learning and networking, which could then become key enablers for development of the youth all across the globe. I feel that this definitely should be a key objective for platforms like this and one of the main focus that the Y20 should have going forward. Again, the youth of today are digital natives and their nature is inherently inquisitive, exploratory, curious. And because the youth drive a culture of innovation, entrepreneurship, they also must have an equal footing in building diversity and equality. Again, through all the experiences and all the programs that we offer, YI continues to build engagement and awareness for the youth in these areas. And it tries to help them to improve their ability to contribute towards the evolving economic landscapes. I think I've felt that there is a very strong need to work for societal remedies. And that this can only happen when you work with grassroots communities, especially in a country like India. And when we talk about protecting lives and livelihoods, especially in the post-pandemic world, equitable distribution of healthcare and relief and rehabilitation efforts is extremely important. We've seen this in real when the second wave hit us and how difficult it was for healthcare access and access to medical resources to be provided equitably across the country. And therefore, we as young Indians have a considerable focus on this. The impact of the virus has been non-discriminatory for all of us, and therefore its impact on lives and livelihoods has also been unequal. In order to power a more equitable growth, I feel that we must focus on the underprivileged, the most badly affected, and this is what all of YI's 56 chapters are most committed to do. We've also just recently expanded our footprint internationally, and with the added power of young Indians across the globe joining in, YI will also enable young Indian diaspora to connect back to their roots and offer support at grassroots levels through skills, technology, finance, and mentorship. The most important aspect of the work that we do is sustainability. And because the youth, again, are the biggest stakeholders in the future of the planet, I feel that Y20 should be the ideal platform to use to align our strengths and networks and work on the ground in cities that are tier 2, tier 3 kind of cities and champion sustainability among all the stakeholders that we work with. This year in YI, we have worked towards building Miyawaki forests with a focus on urban forestation and also creating awareness about clean technologies and green manufacturing practices. There's a lot of excitement among the young people for emerging technologies, and a lot of our members work in pioneering fields of both digital and manufacturing technology. And they use the power of AI, robotics, and other attributes of Industry 5.0. So I feel if we were to collaborate and build these efforts together, using both the power of innovation and technology and our focus towards inclusivity and sustainability, we would really be able to build the path towards a stronger future, both for our nation and for all the countries across the globe. Thank you. Thanks so much, Bharat.
Thank you, Smita. You really set the stage so very well, and on the very many aspects that both YI is involved in, and also the role of youth, I guess, in so many ways. So thank you for that. Now, this is going to be a tough act to follow, and precisely for that reason, may I next invite Gracia from Indonesia to please share her views with us. So Gracia, over to you.
Thank you, Bharat. Thank you so much for this kind of opportunity. Speaking of youth, I totally agree with what Smita has said regarding the quantity and the quality. Let's talk about the quantity. Based on the data from the United Nations Population Fund, or UNFPA 2020, over or even more than half population in the world are from young people. And if we compare that into Indonesian statistics, right now, the population in Indonesia, we are now the fourth largest population after China, India, and the United States of America. And if we take two types of generations, the millennial generations and Z generation, so that starts from the year of 9 until 40 years old, and the total is around 55%. So it's still more than half of population in Indonesia itself is now the productive age or from the younger generations. So we cannot deny that the quantity is getting bigger, even though this cannot be compared with some other developed countries, for example, in Europe. But if we look at the broader picture, the quantity matters when we talk about the young people. And then we talk about the quality itself. Before I jump into the impacts of pandemic, and also we are now in the recovery situation, young people has a very big potential, creativity, and curiosity, because they are not just determining the future. These young people cannot be categorized just the future leader, because like we are all aware, the numbers or the quantity of young people are now dominating, which means that young generations are also the present leader, and they are having much more influential influential capacity or even assets to the development itself. When we talk about sustainable development goals, I'm sure my other colleagues from Y20 chairs like Augustine or Alberta and Sochiro can share more experiences related to the SDGs. But my main point is that young people right now have different or various roles in any kind of sectors, you name it. Youth employment, health sectors, economy, sustainability, even creativity, creative industry. We also have the creative economies. And the role itself, it cannot be just seen by different sectors, but it's also diverse from the role they do or they act in different stakeholders. For example, of course, we can see a lot of grassroots movement or young people movements as a part of civil society movement. And let's talk about, let's say, COP26. You can see that the growing numbers of young people, but we cannot just see these great potential numbers in the aspect of the grassroots movement. Young people can also be acting in the policy making process, because right now, for example, in Indonesia, we are now also trying to include young people as a part of the, let's say, advisor or even the analysts, so they can not just give the recommendations or, for example, like the final communique that has been done years to years from the Y20 Summit, but they can act themselves, be included or involved into the Sherpa meeting or the preparation of the Sherpa track or Sherpa negotiations as a part of the G20. And the third role, they can also be the innovator, because young people nowadays are the determination of again this unpredictable future, and hence they have a big a big something beyond their boundaries or something beyond their mind or even the box, out of the box mindset. That means young people are there to show and give evidences of their creativity. So based on those backgrounds, in the Y20 Indonesia itself next year, we are proposing 4 priority areas that will be discussed in the Y20 Summit, which are: first, youth employment, and specifically we are talking about how the social and safety nets can be guaranteed for those young workers who have jobs in the informal sectors, for example, like Uber driver or any kind of online applications for young people who don't have any clear social net or safety net or any kind of insurance for them. And the second one, we are also talking about the youth social entrepreneurships, because it's getting crazier. Startups, and for example, in Indonesia, we have now like around 2,300 startups from young people. And the second priority area will be about digital transformation, because this is also a part of the priority area for the G20 leaders itself, for G20 Summit Indonesia. So this transformation is not just about how the digital technology and infrastructure equip the development, but we're also talking how young people can take the role within the digital infrastructure or digital institutions. And we're also promoting how the digital finance awareness can be assured, because right now, as Smita already mentioned, young people have a very influential and technological savvy. They're very easy and handy to, operate anything related to social media or even any kind of applications related to the finance. But somehow, based on the World Bank data, in Indonesia itself, around 49% of the young people populations do not have access into the digital finance. And this issue will be exactly related to the finance track. So as the part of the engagement group, Y20 Indonesia is trying to also bridge what's missing, or what can we recommend to the finance track, not just the Sherpa track. The third issue will be about sustainable and livable planet. So it means that we have two subtopics. So first, it's about how the nature capital can be safeguarded. For example, how the ecotourism, the energy transition, and also the climate change or climate crisis can be solved through young people's ideas. And the second subtopic will be about circular economy. So we're trying to collect a lot of best practices from young people or youth initiative about SDGs goal number 12, how circular economy or circular activities can be managed within this development. The last topic, it's called diversity and inclusion, as I think this is kind of a bit similar to what India has got as well. Speaking of culture, Indonesia has got almost 18,000 islands with 700 local languages and 300 ethnicities. And we are also having different customs, any kind of cultures, food, or any other aspects of creative cultures or creative cultural aspects. So those will be some of our uniqueness that we would like to, engage other G20 members, that this diversity should be preserved, as well as how the mental health of the young generations have been affected because of the pandemic. And we are promoting two subtopics. So first, inclusive education. So we try to empower young generations, either their mental health or their quality of educations to be more inclusive, especially for those young people or younger generations who studied or live in the rural areas or remote areas. And the second subtopic will be about how youth can survive with their creative economy or creative industries. Because sometimes when we talk about young people with promising jobs, it tends to be, working at the office or startups or, a very modern type of job or modern type of employment. But there are some other young people who have a very spectacular ideas by showing their creative arts or music or poetries or those kind of creativities that we should also appreciate. And the last point that I would like to highlight is we are also trying to create a kind of innovative appreciation after 11 years of Y20 Summit, which will be called Y20 Awards. So these Y20 Awards will be the first awarding or appreciation activities from Y20 Indonesia that again encourage any kind of young people, either individually or in a group, because there will be two different types of awards, and this is open for any global youth network. So it's not just for the G20 countries, because again, when we talk about inclusiveness, we are also considering those young people as in like youth indigenous groups or youth with disability, because disability groups have been promoted into the first Sherpa meeting in Indonesia, and all the G20 countries have agreed that we should make sure that disabled groups or any kind of minority groups and other vulnerable groups can be included. So yeah, I think those are the points that I would like to deliver. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Gracia. And you brought out so well the many similarities between the demographics and culture and many things between India and Indonesia. And just recently on this so-called Indo-Indo relationship, there was this publication, this book published called Kesamaan. I don't know if I'm saying it right. And it actually got a lot of coverage from both sides. And I was delighted myself to also give some of my views in it. But clearly, I think the youth will be driving this because, we are especially young countries. And up next, may I invite Chiba-san, who is here. I'm not sure whether you're dialing in from Boston or Chiba, sorry, from Tokyo, but because Chiba is a place near Tokyo as well, as we know. So over to you, please. We are looking forward to hearing from you. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm actually dialing from Boston. It's 6:48 a.m. and it has been like a good morning for me. So thank you very much for having me. So I think, Gracia mentioned a great point about Indonesia, how the impact of the youth is increasing given the population increase. But just to give a context of Japan. So Japan is quite unique because we're in a declining population and also we're in an aging society. So the number of youth has been decreasing year by year. Just to give the numbers, the number of youth from 0 to 30 years old is about 29% currently, but it's only decreasing year by year. But nonetheless, we think that youth empowerment is extremely important for the society because of three main reasons that I would like to mention today. So the first main reason is because of the economic development, especially in relationships with the startup. Now, we've put 50 countries with 50 variables, with 50 years in order to investigate what is the determinant factor of economic growth. Now, the result was astonishing. It was not population. It was not fiscal policy. It was the number of entrepreneurs. So the number of entrepreneurs had a clear correlation with economic growth. Like countries like Israel, China, America, and other countries, the only variable that had the strongest correlation was the number of entrepreneurs. And what is the driver of entrepreneurs? It's usually the young people. So empowering the young people would lead to, much likely to lead to the number of startups, which would boost economic growth. And just to give you the numbers, if an employee chooses, like if a person chooses to start a startup compared to joining a corporation, on average, the impact to the economy, the impact that they will create their jobs is 140 times greater than just joining a corporation. This is, again, I'm averaging out like the companies that are super successful in IPOing to the companies like, a small coffee shop, but on average, it's 140 times greater. So youth, you can see that youth empowerment is extremely beneficial for economic growth. That's the first point that I would like to mention. And of course, there's also the digital aspect, as Gracia and Smita-san has already mentioned. The second point is for the societal movement. So even though the population, for example, in Japan is declining, I would like to mention that the voice of youth has a compound impact to the society because of digital capabilities like SNS, like Twitter and Facebook. the youth are much more capable in using these kind of tools, so that even though the population is kind of, a little bit small, the impact that they have on the voice and the social sentiment is extremely huge. And the government, for example, the Japanese government is realizing this day by day, so that, for example, excluding the youth from the decision-making process would actually kind of destabilize the society, because of you cannot, so there's some kind of unpredictable events happening in Twitter, and that kind of movement occurs, it gets big, and there's a lot of instability in the society. So for example, for this reason, fortunately, when there was a Tokyo 2020 Olympics, I was appointed as the advisor to the chairwoman of analyzing the youth sentiment, and I drafted her opening speech ceremony, so that make sure to choose the words that are inclusive to the youth, not only to the population that one person can actually address. This was actually very successful. The approval rate went very up increasingly dramatically. And I think this is one example of including the youth in the decision-making process is extremely beneficial for the stability of the society. So that's the second reason. The third one is simply the population. So the population means it has a larger economy in general, and it means that larger total addressable market of the country. And the driver of populations is the young people. If young people want more children, that relates to more population in the future, and which would strengthen the country's economy. So the topics like corporate culture reform, education, youth unemployment, like Graciam just mentioned, are all important issues to create an environment that young people can thrive and, for example, would choose to have children. So because of all these three elements that I just mentioned, I believe that youth empowerment is extremely important, even for the countries that are having a declining population like Japan. And of course, it is substantial for both developed and developing nations, like all of you are just now sitting. So thank you very much.
Thank you for those very articulate and concise remarks. And thank you for joining us even so early in the morning from Cambridge. The points you made, I think, were very brilliant in the way that they drew out both the differences and the similarities that demographics point out between the youth of many countries, even those which have demographics as diverse as ours. I remember shortly pre-COVID, I was honored to be invited by MOFA, your foreign ministry, to lead a delegation of young leaders or future leaders to Tokyo, Hamamatsu, and Nagoya. And a part of what we discussed inevitably almost daily was about the diminishing demographic dividend of Japan. However, this uniquely led to a very strong case for partnership with countries like India, which, in addition to many other aspects, could also provide some of the youthful force. And so thank you once again. And now, speaking of youthful force, I do remember that both youth and force are never in short supply from my friends in Italy. And with that, may I segue to our next speaker, Alberta, who joins us, I think from Italy, though your LinkedIn page we just saw says London. So anyhow, thank you for joining us, and now it's over to you.
Thank you very much for the invite, and greetings to everyone that is here today, and particularly to all the Y20 chairs of past and future years. Yes, I'm actually in London in this moment, but I'm from Italy. And I totally agree with everything that has been said before me. I mean, Italy is very similar to Japan from the point of having an aging population. But at the same time, as also Japan and as been mentioned before, the startups and innovation driven by young people, it's super important. The last data from Italy shows that 19% of the most innovative startups are founded by young people. And this is like a growing number that makes an impact, of course, on economic growth, but also on innovation and new technologies. I'm the founder of the Young Ambassador Society, that is an association that I founded 10 years ago with the goal of empowering young people and building bridges between youth and political institutions. And this year in particular, we work with the G20 Italian presidency to make sure that young people were involved in the G20 process, mainly through the U20. We started the process at the beginning of the year, and we hosted consultation sessions with more than 100 youth associations, representing more than 1 million of young people worldwide. We addressed different themes from sustainability and climate change to innovation and future of work, from culture and education to equal opportunities. And we shared the proposals with several G20 ministerial meetings focusing on health, culture, environment, employment, and education. Of course, the recent pandemic has marked the beginning of devastating crisis for many people, and especially for youth. Many young people have lost their jobs or face a decrease in working hours and jobs opportunities. Young people have also faced disruption in learnings, with many schools closing and classes cancelled or moved online. All of this has contributed to increasing inequalities in our societies. The recent crisis are creating new problems and exacerbating the new ones. I think that in this context, empowering youth, and also in particular the U20 together with the other engagement groups, is a very important platform on which young people have the unique opportunity to shape the recovery by radically rethinking our society, economic and social principles. The voices and ideas of young people must represent a breaking point with the past for a more innovative, inclusive and sustainable future. I just want to briefly touch to two of the main themes that we addressed this year with the U20. The first one was climate change and sustainability. Of course, those are themes that really concern young people. This emerged from a large consultation that we conducted last year in preparation for the G20 and U20 to collect young people voices and opinions on what priorities should be addressed by the G20 leaders. Now, 87% out of the 10,000 young people that participated in the survey said that sustainability and protecting our planet should be the top priority for our leaders at global level. This, of course, adds to the million young people that over the last years have made their voice heard, and those who contributed with concrete projects focused on sustainability, circular economy, sustainable consumption, and production. So we strongly believe that young people represent a unique resource for government to accelerate the transition toward a greener and sustainable world. In this context, we think that education is key to train people, and especially young people, that are able to promote and implement sustainable green economy models, and at the same time to perform research and develop innovation that is fundamental for our future. Nowadays, young people are certainly not only the victims of climate change, but they are contributors to their community, agents of positive change to build a sustainable future. Another very important thing was, that has been also mentioned before, employment and education. And in particular, it's fundamental to ensure access to quality education to any level for all, both in person and online, despite gender, race, and economic constraints. Unfortunately, as today, quality education is something that is accessible to few more than many. It is essential to foster stronger connection between prospective students and employees, at the same time to invest in education and protection systems to help young people after they leave education to the job market. Also, it's very important for both young and less young people to learn necessary skills for the job market of today, tomorrow, in line with the passion and interests. So those are a few of the themes that we touched this year, and we noticed that they were very important for all the G20 countries, also for Italy, but also for the non-G20 countries. And now we are sure that Indonesia, of course, next year, and then India, we will continue doing a great job making young people's voices heard at the center of the G20. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Alberta, for your views, and also for drawing out not only the similarities, but even within the youth, the need to constantly work towards managing diversity and the other, concerns around equity. So the nuances are perhaps not appreciated always. So thank you for drawing that out very well. And now from Argentina, may I please request Agustin to share his views. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Barat, for giving me the floor. Thank you, Alberta, Gracia, Shiva. It's been a pleasure also to listen to you, and congratulations, Alberta, for finishing the Y20 this year. It's a super tough challenge. No of them already said this, but having the possibility to work with young people from 20 countries and to do advocacy at the G20 structures and with the governments, with the national ministers and with the presidential units is a tough challenge. And I think that that's connected with Smita points that Y20 is the youth engagement group of the G20. And I think it's one of the major avenues for young civil society to engage in this government structural debate. I underline civil society because already governments, they have their own structures, and the Y20 is a way for the young people that self-organize to actually have a voice in this huge paradigm shift realities. People say like the communique is a couple of words, but behind those communiques, you have like huge political and philosophical debates and ways of seeing the world. So after seeing that, I would like to just be one of the last, just to reply and to share some thoughts that I have. The first one is when we speak about inclusion and we speak about young people, we have to be aware that almost 50% of the youth population, if not more, do not have their own personal computers. They do not have a high-speed internet. They wouldn't be able to be in this Zoom call actually seeing to us. So when we speak about youth, we have to speak about many young people. And when we consider youth policies, of course, we have to think in the young social entrepreneur in Silicon Valley or Bangalore, but we also have to speak about the young people living in a slum that do not have a toilet, right? So we have to think in all the spectrum. The other one, and especially knowing that our audience are companies, is gender inequality. We cannot stand a world where we are paid in a different balance up to our gender. We cannot stand with a world where we have a crystal roof where women cannot access to power decision making. We cannot stand with a world that has a sticky floor where women cannot actually have a raise because of the care conditions of being a mother or the cultural belief that we have. In this globalized world, we have to understand that gender equality is a must to achieve. And in these moral standards that a young population we put to the world and to the G20, the second one is sustainability. We must change the way we produce, we must change the way we consume, and we must change the way we employ. If we continue producing the way we are not going to be able to have sun anymore, to go to the beaches and enjoy the water, to have a forest, to do a deep breath without coughing. And this could be sounding like alarming and exaggeration, but it's already in all the United Nations reports. By 2050, if we continue in the current path that we are not going to have a livable planet Earth. And there is no planet B. We already know this. So in every conversation, I encourage you to speak about sustainability and to do a minor change in your way of life. Like, which product I'm consuming? Is this local? Is this global? In my manufacturing process, is there something I can improve? Because, of course, governments have to take huge decisions. But in our corporations, in our organizations, we can also produce change. Then, just to promote the debate with Gracia and Sochiro-san, and also with Smita, I don't think that young people is important because of quantity. It's not about demographic, because demographic will change. In Argentina, it's going to be 15 years and we start looking into Japan. in Latin America in 30, 40 years. But in 100 years, it will happen also to China and to India. So it's not important to talk about young people because of our quantity. It's important to talk about people because of our unique perspectives and our unique characteristics. Here, I will be supported by neuroscience. Being a young adult between the age of 16 and 24 years old, but it's not my case, I'm already too old for this. The way that your brain is growing has or produce a more interconnectivity between different areas, and at the same time, you don't have developed the frontal cortex. And the frontal cortex is super important because it's the one that assesses the challenges, it's the one that actually assesses the dangers of the situations, and also is the one that makes us more conservative. So if you need a rapid change, you need a change in the status quo, you need to question the things how they actually are, young people is the unique age to actually assess what's happening, criticize what's going on, and propose new things. As Soichiro-san says, innovation is what young people can work. This is not like, hey, let's put young people at the decision-making table and make them take all the calls. It's about the intergenerational co-constructions. It's about having experience and innovation in the same table. And in this co-construction, finding the sweet spot where we can actually foster change, but at the same time, taking advantage of everything we built during the last years. Lastly, but going specifically to the topic of this table, building partnerships for a new world, growth, competitiveness, and sustainability technology. So, sorry, it's not about growth. We don't need more growth. It's about finding a sustainable way to live. It's not about living better. It's about living well. With what I already have, I'm living well. Do I actually need more from this? It's about, I'm the CEO founder of a social organization. Now we are 30 employees. We have an impact over 3 million people. We raised over $1 million last year. And my goal is not to have like 2 million next year. My goal is to have a more meaningful impact. It's about giving more skills to young people. It's about giving more research to the private sector so they can actually build meaningful way of life for the worker. So it's not about thinking in growth, it's thinking in living well. And actually it's about thinking in well-being. And I encourage all of you to look to the OECD, to the well-being OECD index, also to change the narrative and to see in which other ways can we actually develop ourselves. And then competitiveness is one of the things that brought us here to this consumption, to this extractivism of the world, and to taking all of the resources from planet Earth. It's about cooperative. It's about thinking in the different companies and the different sectors and think, okay, which one is our mission? How can we actually empower ourselves? One of my main challenges in my actual mindset is this is not something that I'm saying that I'm applying every day. It's something that I need to work every day to actually achieve this. Is when a competitor gets close to us and asks us some questions. Our policy is to open our door and share everything of what we do. Something that we created, but during the Y20 Argentina, was the Social Innovation Warehouse. It's a platform, a capacity building program for young social entrepreneurs working to tackle the SDGs with a company, right? But their goal is not the profit. Their goal is to tackle the SDGs. So funny things, but what happens usually is that all of these young social entrepreneurs, like 200 companies for 85 countries, they're gathered together. So perhaps they have the same business model, perhaps they have the same segmentation of clients, but they help each other because we are aligned in our goals. So one last thought, speaking about partnership, is about speaking about your purpose, speaking about your dreams, speaking about the vision of the world that you have, and by sharing that, we will find like long-lasting points that could gather all of us together to work towards sustainable solutions. So thank you so much for listening, and I'm eager to also listen to other speakers. Gracias.
Gracias to you too, Agustin, and thank you so much for sharing those very incredibly motivating views. And it's great that you're actually walking the talk. So you yourself are doing so much that you spoke about, especially in the area of sustainability. And in many areas, in many ways, I think the challenges that we share are strikingly similar. And Smita, for example, had pointed out how we've added over some 30 unicorns in this year alone. And while that happens, we also share some of the challenges you do in Argentina, which is that we have a sort of a two-speed recovery, where you have unicorns on one side, and on the other side, there is a small section of digital have-nots, because you still require electronics or whatever to log into this sort of virtual classrooms or whatever there is. So plenty of food of thought. Thank you for that. And last but certainly not least, is Alexei still here from Russia? Okay, so I think Alexei probably was not able to stay connected. I do remember he was on the move when he came and said hi to us at the very beginning in the digital green room or the backstage. But in the meanwhile, I'll take advantage of this extra time to take a question from one of the panelists, and this is a member of YI Young Indians. And this question is posed towards Garcia from Indonesia. And the question is regarding the youths, both urban and rural. Is there a need to directly engage with the rural youths in both policy and decision making, which would give a stronger voice to priorities of the rural youth, but also there are opportunities for the rest of us to learn from rural practices. And the example here is given, quite similar to what some of you have pointed out, for topics such as climate change. So the rural youth perhaps are more connected and more benign in terms of environmental impact. So are there direct opportunities for rural youths to engage at the Y20? So Garcia, if you want to take that. Sorry, Gracia.
Thank you for the question. It's a very interesting one, because speaking of inclusiveness, rural youth, remote area, or those minor groups of young people are always highlighted. In our team with the Y20 Indonesia, we're trying our best to include or engage as many as possible for young people in the rural areas. One of our strategy or our ways that we provide and create the local chapters, that's what we call. So it's like a local branch of Y20 in certain areas of Indonesia, because again, it's very difficult to, make sure that 18,000 islands, or at least right now we've got 500 islands have been populated, including the young rural areas there, can participate in the Y20 Summit or the Y20 events next year. So at least we have 4 local branches or local chapters of Y20 local areas in, we call it the Western Indonesia, Central Indonesia, and Eastern Indonesia, because each area of that has different time zone. We have 3 different time zones, and that's why we try to put at least one representative there, and we designed or we assigned the local community there to be, the coordinator, and try to engage and invite as many as possible for young rural areas. So first, the representative, that's what we're trying to do. And second, of course, it's their participation, because since the pandemic hit the world in 2020, that's also the first virtual summit of the Y20, and it's becoming like a new trend in the summit itself. So in Y20 Indonesia, we're trying to make it hybrid, the combination of the virtual and the offline. That's what we are planning so far. So for those people who live in the rural area, we also coordinate with the Ministry of ICT, Information and Communication Technology, to make sure that they already, build the infrastructure, or at least put the connectivity of digital technology there, so that they can they can still participate or be involved in the Y20 Summit online, because the offline will be only for the observers or the invited guests and also the delegates. And the third, this is like another the further step that we are still planning and trying to do is the collaboration, especially the collaboration among engagement groups. We are aware that this Y20 network cannot do it alone, and most of the time each engagement groups might have their own agenda, and they just struggle themselves to make sure that their communique or their outcomes of the summit will be delivered to the G20 leaders. By seeing this challenge, we are trying to initiate the coalition. We call it the coalition or the joint connection among engagement groups, and it's been done as the initial step. We already created the communication network or the communication platform, and we did like a couple of times, 3 times so far, having a physical meeting or meet each other, get to know all the engagement groups, 8 engagement groups so far. And then we also try to help each other and support that they can also bring their rural youth or recommend some areas who can which we can approach, that make sure again this rural youth are not just the representatives, or they're not just the decoration in the policymaking process, but we're trying to engage them and present them, or even try to ensure that their voices or their recommendations can be connected to the Sherpa. Fortunately, our Sherpa is very, very close to each engagement groups, and that's something that we're trying to promote, that this is something that we have to do together. And that's why the main theme of the G20 Indonesia is recover together, recover stronger, because if we don't do it together, we cannot be stronger to face or to even develop or survive through this unpredictable pandemic situation. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that excellent answer and very expansive answer. And with that, I think we can now close the session. I know many of you have taken out time either from the middle of a very busy working day, or like Soichiro from the middle of your sleep. So in either case, thank you everybody for making this big effort to be here. On behalf of the organizers and on behalf of myself, thank you everybody. And I hope to stay connected with each of you, and hopefully we'll see you back next year for the Partnership Summit. Goodbye.
Bye.